Hello, you're very welcome along to the Matchbook Weekend Football Podcast, one final time covering the Premier League. I'm your host, Daniel Hussey, joined by a full gang today of Mark O'Hare, Adrian, Clarke and Miguel Delaney. Very briefly on the season, guys. Mark, it's been a long season. We spoke a little bit off air before this recording that it was shaping up to be probably one of the most exciting Premier Leagues in years with the title race. The top four was looking brilliant with new clubs involved. But realistically, it's been a bit of a damn squid in terms of only the relegation on the final day of the season.
Yeah, it's just, the hope that kills, isn't it? A couple of weeks ago, we were sort of so excited about both ends of the table, even the race for Europe as well. Looked exciting. At one stage, we had 8 or 9 teams in the relegation race. But yeah, that's the only thing up for grabs really this weekend, bar potentially a Europa Conference League battle between Villa, Spurs, and I think Brentford as well. Got an outside chance for that. So yeah, not the ending we'd hoped for as neutrals, but yeah, it's been a very, very long season. I'm sure Miguel's probably worked harder than any of us, but I'm certainly looking forward to a bit of a summer break. In fact, that stage of the season now, I only sort of concentrate on matches that really matter, and I didn't even bother watching Wednesday night's match between Brighton and Man City. I put my full focus on the Coppa Italia final, and that's a bit of a rarity for me in my household. So yeah, quite looking forward to the break. But first of all, looking forward to a couple of really key battles at the bottom end of the table, which I've got some big opinions on. So looking forward to doing that.
Yeah, Miguel, you're still as busy as ever breaking the Ange news, potentially going to Tottenham Hotspur, for example. But if you think about how long this season has been, like the Conte, Tuchel handshake was this season, the Ronaldo saga was this season. It's just been probably the longest in history just because of that World Cup.
Oh, yeah. We've been talking about it. I mean, it was interesting because last summer basically represented the first break in football after the crunch of the post-COVID calendar, or rather when football came back in the middle of COVID. And that basically created football for 2 years straight. But it feels like we've almost been back into that again because the World Cup has had such a massive effect on the character. And the World Cup itself, as we know from having sat down doing the pod throughout it, it is a slog. But for everyone involved, and in a lot of ways. And of course, it pushed out the start of the season to the beginning of August, and is now pushed out the end. So I'm going to actually, while we're all talking about the last day of the season now, my season actually goes on for another month after this because I'm doing FA Cup, Champions League, and then obviously the England internationals. I was at Gareth Southgate's press conference yesterday, and he even when it came out like, we're here to announce the squad for the matches against Malta and North Macedonia. I think even that went out on social media. It didn't exactly get the most excited response. So, yeah, quite a wind down, you might say.
Yeah, and of course, Evan Ferguson, not in the England squad. He will be in the Ireland squad and confirmed he will be staying with Ireland throughout. So that's a relief to most Irish football fans listening. Adrian, Clarke, sum up the season for you from an Arsenal perspective. But overall, was it a good season, a Premier League season?
Yeah, we had a title race, didn't we? Up until the end. Look, Arsenal, exceeded expectations. It was fantastic while it lasted. It's the hope that kills you, isn't it? And there was a reason that most Gooners were very reluctant to say, yeah, we're going to win the title when everybody else was. It's, it was always a big ask. And there's absolutely no shame in finishing second to a team as good as this version of Manchester City. So look, this could be a season that lives long in the memory for, of English football if City get that treble. So we'll have to wait and see. But no, from an Arsenal end, it was very good. We had some tremendous moments.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, brilliant season. Pleasure bringing you with the guys here, and we'll hope for one final push here this weekend. Hopefully, land you with a few winners. We're going to start with the 3 Premier League games, all involving the relegation candidates. We will look at the Championship playoff final, and we'll also have a little pointer towards the League One and League Two playoff finals. It is a busy bank holiday weekend in the UK. We will start with Everton versus Bournemouth and take a look at the betting that we currently have at matchbook.com. These are all Sunday 4:30 games, every game kicking off at the same time. It's Everton 1.49 on Matchbook, Bournemouth 7.4. Looks quite big. We'll get into that in a second. Draw is available at 4.9. Both teams to score yes is 1.9 with no at the underdog in that market at 1.97. The Asian handicap sees Bournemouth get 1.25 goal head start at 1.82, and the total for this line is 2.5. Now, Mark O'Hare, you filed your Matchbook Insights column this morning and a rare foray into the Premier League action. So I'm guessing this is a confident shout here, Everton versus Bournemouth.
Confident in the sense that I think the price is wrong, so I have to get involved in that sense. But Yeah, I thought Everton being priced up as favourites to win away at Wolves last weekend was a nonsense, really. But I actually think the current price on Everton to beat Bournemouth on Sunday kind of trumps a lot, really. To see Everton sub 1.5 for any Premier League match, regardless of opposition or venue, to me is laughable, really. They may well win this match, but betting isn't always about what you think might happen. It's about playing the probabilities around events occurring. And in this instance, the market gives them a 67% chance of winning, which is incredibly high considering where they're at right now. So I've been quite positive about some of their more recent performances, in fairness, but the cold facts are Everton are not winning football matches consistently. It's 1 win in 10, it's 2 wins in 12, it's 4 wins in 17 under Sean Dyche since the start of February. Just 4 clean sheets in that 17-game sample, and they scored multiple goals just 4 times. Now, my model, which takes into account expected goals and shot data, has Everton around 2.08 to win this game. That's without sort of factoring in the motivational aspect. But for me, the decrease from 2.07 to 1.49 is just drastically over the top. So just because Everton need to win this match doesn't make them suddenly vastly superior to the Everton team we've seen over the previous 37 matches. Everton needed to win last week away at Wolves, and they required that bundled stoppage time equaliser in the 99th minute. Everton needed to win the week before and didn't. Everton needed to win the week before. Okay, they beat Brighton 5-1, but that's a complete freak result. And you could say Bournemouth have nothing to play for, but Wolves didn't have anything to play for really last week either, and Everton failed to beat them. So obviously this match takes place at Goodison, which will kind of give Everton an extra leg up, if you like. But actually, if you look at Everton's campaign, they've scored the fewest home goals in the Premier League this season, just 15 and 18. And only Southampton and Leicester have won fewer home matches. Everton have won 5 times in 18 at Goodison, yet they're 149 to win here. We talk about this being a must-win scenario. The truth is it's not absolutely essential either. They could survive with a draw or even a defeat, depending on results elsewhere. But I think the key factor for me here in opposing Everton being such strong favourites is Calvert-Lewin's fitness and availability. It looks very likely he's going to be missing, which would be an absolute hammer blow, I think, for Everton going forward. He has been a real catalyst for some of their more enterprising efforts lately. I think I have real concerns about their attacking ability without him. But going back to the main point here, which is the price, Everton are 149 to win this match. Everton have been odds-on favourites once all season. They were 1.89 at home to Nottingham Forest in August. So that's about a 20% increase on the odds this weekend, and that was 9 months ago. The shortest price since August was 2.26 when they hosted Fulham in April, and they were stuffed. If you look at Everton's price, they've only been below 2.5 4 times all season. They're 1.49 here. It's mental, really. You look at Bournemouth's price and Bournemouth's odds, they've only been bigger price against Man City home and away, as well as away trips to Liverpool, Newcastle, Chelsea, United, Brighton and Arsenal. They're going away to Everton, not a team nowhere near the calibre of those previous clubs I mentioned. Their record against the bottom 6 this season reads 6 wins, 1 draw, 2 defeats. They've already won at Forest, Leicester and Southampton. They lost by a 1-goal margin away at Leeds as well. So they're capable, obviously reliant on them having to turn up and put their best foot forward. But I think they will be capable of being competitive in this match. And ultimately it comes down to the price and line, which I just think is just too fast, factoring in the motivational aspect far too much. And just on Everton again, they beat Arsenal in Dyche's first game. They've since taken 15 points from 16 league games, which is relegation form. That's despite playing Leeds, Forest, Wolves, Palace and Leicester, teams in and around the area they're in. They've already required 3 equalisers in the 89th minute or later since the beginning of April. They could easily have been relegated already without them. So, yeah, I'm quite happy to take Bournemouth +1 and a quarter on the Asian handicap. I put it up about 1.88 or 1.86. So it's been chipped in there to 1.82 already. But this bet has actually made money in 35 of Everton's 37 league games this season. Only twice have they won by 2 goals or more. We require Bournemouth to win, draw, or just lose by 1 goal exactly to actually make money from this selection. So, yeah, I'm going to put my faith in Bournemouth being competitive at Goodison Park this weekend, just because Everton are far too short.
Okay, yeah, fascinating case for Bournemouth there. And Adrian, you're in agreement now. You're on the beach radar. It tends to be very good throughout the 4 top leagues in England. Where are Bournemouth right now? Because one thing, they have lost 3 in a row, so I guess the market is maybe over-factoring that, but it's still a factor nonetheless, that the motivation factor here, that Bournemouth don't need to do anything in this game. They're on 39 points, of course, and safe.
I kind of disagree, because no manager ever wants to lose the last 4 matches of a season, before they go on the summer holidays. That's miserable. Even though they are safe, even though they're celebrating to a degree their Premier League survival, I think the fact that they've lost their last 3 actually works against Everton here. So I think Gary O'Neill will have been disappointed by that and frustrated with his players, and I think he'll have got them bang up for this game. I think he wants to go out on a high. Every team, every individual wants to go out final game of the season with a win. So that feel-good factor can sort of take you away on your summer holidays. So there's no chance that Bournemouth will have zero motivation in this game. Just doesn't happen in English football. We're very honest like that, and I think that Everton are in for a tough game. And let's face it, Bournemouth are a bogey team for Everton. If you look at the last 4 meetings, all Bournemouth wins, and Bournemouth have scored at least 3 goals in all 4 of those meetings. So they love playing against Everton. Will they get 3 or more this time? Well, who knows? I wouldn't write off the prospects. There's a lot of pressure on Everton here. They're low scorers. We know that, the Toffees. From a tactical point of view, I do give Everton a very strong chance from set plays. Bournemouth have been dreadful from them all season. They've conceded 16 corners, 21 set-piece goals overall. That's the most of any team in the division. And I looked at Everton. Everton have only scored 7 set-piece goals, but their XG is up at 15. So they've actually been, they're very dangerous from those situations. So I think that's an avenue they can use to hurt Bournemouth. But with Calvert-Lewin out, I'm struggling to see where they're going to score the goals here. You know, McNeil's been in good form. We know that. Iwobi too. But I think this is a tough game. Everton, of course, they could win it. Of course, they could rise to the occasion. But I think Bournemouth can absolutely make this competitive. And for that reason, I've gone with the same bet. I had the same stats as Mark. You know, 1 home game all season, this bet lands plus 1.25, or all but 1 home game. So the Everton beat Palace 3-0. Apart from that, they've not beaten anyone at home by 2 or more goals. Away from home, that win at Brighton was their only win by 2 goals or more. So I think they're very, very unlikely to win this by 2 goals or more, which means we get paid out if we take this bet on. So Bournemouth plus 1.25 for me is absolutely one of the picks of the weekend.
Okay, Adrian and Mark are in agreement. Buyer beware. Bournemouth plus 1.25 goal at 1.82. Miguel, set this game up for us from an Everton perspective. They obviously have the stadium coming the season after next. It's a massive game for Everton. Like, it's inconceivable this team goes down, but they were so close to relegation last season. Can they keep just staying up in the final couple of games of the season?
Well, yeah, I mean, there's 2 massive elements to it. One is obviously that history you've just mentioned, having been relegated in 72 years. The other, I suppose, is the medium-term future of the club. Now, that has been eased a little bit with the news of investment 25% in the last few days. But like, I mean, for a club like Everton, this is about something bigger. It's about the pride of staying in it. And there's an interesting thing here as well, is where if Everton and Leeds go down, it will mean the 3 teams that go down, although this doesn't actually apply to Southampton, they'll have won more titles between them than has ever happened in the Premier League. The most is 11, so this would take it to 12, which, if I just kind of rather maybe seamlessly get up the laptop page, actually have the year it happened, the 11. That was in 2016. But yeah, and I think that indicates a stake. I mean, because I suppose it's not just about the frantic nature today. It's the size of the clubs, all of whom can claim, I suppose, to be almost the biggest in England, outside the splintering Big Six. Although all of them, of course, could point to the fact that they've won the title more recently than Tottenham Hotspur, and Everton would have a long time argued they were the biggest of all of those outside that group, if not some in it. They were one of the big 5 that pushed for the Premier League in the first place. So there's all sorts swirling around this that will feed into the day, as well as just basic pride. And I completely agree with that. I mean, one of the things I've been thinking about, like I've obviously done a big piece ahead of the weekend about this, about the day itself. And when you go into the game, yeah, sure, on paper, it looks like Everton have the most forgiving game. It's a Bournemouth team in mid-table. Dyche seems to have had the best connection with the squad out of the three managers, although we'll come to that as well. But of course, one of the reasons the teams are in this situation is because you can't guarantee anything with them, as Mark has laid out. And also, this is a big thing on a day like this, and why it kind of feeds into manic elements happening. So, like, I've been talking to a few people, obviously, that are involved in days like this, one of them including Gareth Farley, who scored one of the goals that kept Everton in the league on the or in the Premier League on the final day in 1998. And one of the most common strands was that their main memories of the day is always when suddenly the stadium goes, especially if you're at home, the stadium goes a bit quiet, because then they realize that something has happened elsewhere. And so many players talk about it as directly affecting performance. And I think it means whatever about how Bournemouth approached this game, the first goal on this day could be so decisive and have a chain reaction. And again, it feeds into this kind of thing we've long discussed about the games at the bottom. You're never going to more acutely feel on a day like this, and that it does create that back and forth, that chain reaction, where suddenly, because of the desperation involved, the urgency, and like that's one thing about the final day as well. It can almost feel like you're intruding on grief a little bit. That's what's being shown, and because of that, I think, and I completely agree with the lads, but I'm tempted to go for both teams to score, just because of that potential rain reaction. Also because of what Adrian said is about, it doesn't feel like Bournemouth are going to lay off, or or that they're on the beach just yet. And there's a bit of spike to O'Neill as well. So I'm going to go for that.
Yeah. So Miguel's gone for both teams to score. Yes, going to lock in at Bournemouth plus 1.25 for a podcast pick at 1.82. But Miguel's laid the other side you can potentially go with there. But look, quick update in the table. Everton are 33 points, Leicester City 31, and Leeds 31. As Miguel alluded to there, two of those three big clubs will be relegated, which usually on the final day might be 1 from 3, 1 from 4. This is going to be pretty seismic on Sunday. So that club we named there, Leeds United, they are third bottom, out of their hands, but we'll take a look at the betting. They host Tottenham Hotspur here, live on BT. This is the BT Sport game here. Leeds are 2.84. Tottenham favourites, 2.46. Still going for a Conference League spot. The draw available at 4.0. Both teams score yes. Heavily favoured in this market compared to the other game. 1.51 for yes. Leeds are getting plus a quarter of a goal head start at 1.82, and the goal line is 3.5, but that is shaded towards the under a good bit. Miguel, again, lay this game here, Big Sam with Leeds United. Look, I guess in some ways he hasn't quite had the time. It's not completely over yet, but I know the Opta thing that Sky always use, I think they had the Leeds relegated at around 92% going into this weekend, which I guess shows you where they're at right now. Yeah,
the big thing for Leeds is they don't need one favour, they need two. That I suppose just extends that. And also, I mean, if we're talking about, I suppose, or bringing this down to what Mark is talking about in terms of probabilities, one of the things that's been striking for me all season, or sorry, really for half the season with Leeds, is this is a squad built to a frenetic, high-pressing game, built for Bielsa, that Marsh, for all his faults, took on and was very much in keeping with that style. Javi Gracia was not that style. He was kind of halfway down along that spectrum of tactics, if you like. And Sam Allardyce is further along again. And I think that does explain why maybe he hasn't had the effect you might necessarily have expected from an Allardyce team. I think it has made Leeds quite porous. And again, that will feed into a day like this where there's going to be a bit of release about it, especially for Spurs. Actually, if you go by the last few weeks, there is an argument that this is the most forgiving game of all, because Spurs have just had this season that's completely drifting, that they all want it to end. And yet now, just because the end is in sight in that way, you do wonder whether there'll be just that kind of strange response from the players, especially because they'll be in that heightened atmosphere that Ellen Road will have on the day. And I do think this has a lot of ingredients to just open up. Again, also conditioned by the same factors we're talking about in terms of potential chain reaction from what happens elsewhere, but also because the state both of these teams go into the game at. Spurs games have almost been free-for-alls lately. And despite all that, we have actually had the consistency of Harry Kane scoring. And he will fancy that Leeds defence as it is right now. So again, I'm pushing it out there. Maybe stolen Mark Thunder a little bit here because he's going quite high as well for over 3.5.
Okay, yeah, and we'll hand it over to Mark O'Hare. Just a quick one, Mark, on the maybe motivational factor for Tottenham. But so going into the final game, there's one Conference League spot available. You alluded to that earlier. Villa 58, Spurs 57, Brentford 56. Brentford hosts Man City. Realistically, they probably won't get 3 points there. and Villa have Brighton, so like that they could also drop points here. How motivated would Ryan Mason be to try and get that last European spot?
I think he'll be motivated, but what about his players?
The rest of them, spot on.
They look like they've checked out a while ago. I think they could be considered to be on the beach. I know they started quite promisingly against Brentford last week, but as soon as the equaliser went in, they just capitulated a little bit, really. And I think there's quite a few players at that club who are probably looking for an exit door. There's still upheaval off the pitch. The managerial chase has been a disaster yet again. So there's not a lot I like about Spurs, and I think Leeds have got a good opportunity here. I'd be much more comfortable backing Leeds at 284 to beat Spurs than Everton at 149 against Bournemouth. Same scenario, really, but it's even more so heightened for Leeds in terms of being it must win. But yeah, Spurs, what is it? 1 win in 8 away now since January in the Premier League. They've conceded 2 goals more in 6 of those 8 away days. Across all venues, 1 clean sheet in 12, 5 defeats in 7, 2 wins in 10. One of those was a deeply undeserving win against Brighton as well. So Tottenham are not a team I'd be trusting as favourites away against anybody right now, irrespective of the situation. So I would make Leeds slightly shorter than they are, but there's no way I could be trusting Leeds either, a team that's won 7 matches all season. I thought there were flickers of promise and potential. We talked about them in the last 20 against Man City. The game was long gone before then anyhow, and then the game against Newcastle, I thought there were signs of possible progress, but they were utterly atrocious last weekend in a fixture that looked all set up for them, really, with West Ham players being on the beers after qualifying for the final, the European final. But it's just gone terribly badly for Leeds since beating Forest at home in early April. A win would put them in a really good position to survive. They've taken 2 points from the possible 24 since then, 6 defeats and 8 winless games. That includes defeats by 2-1, 3-1, 4-1, 5-1 and 6-1. And they've collapsed all too easily, all too often. And that defence has been an issue for years as well. But just more recently, they've been failing to take some good opportunities in the final third as well. So my worry for Leeds, or backing any sort of pro-Leeds bet here, is if results do filter through from elsewhere, there is a danger that they can disintegrate. And that's why I've settled on goals here, because I would be astonished if Leeds won this match with a clean sheet. So if Leeds are going to win this, I can't see them doing it without stopping Spurs scoring, because Spurs have scored in all but 4 Premier League games this season. But actually, if you go to the raw numbers over the course of the whole campaign, as well as more recently, it's overwhelmingly in your favour if you're going to back goals here. So we've got over 3.5 goals at 242. 11 of Leeds' last 12 have featured at least 3 goals. 8 of those 12 went over 3.5. All 12 saw both teams oblige. 44% of matches at Ellen Road have gone over 3.5 goals. 56% of Tottenham's away days have gone over 3.5 goals. In their last 11, 9 have gone over 2.5, 7 have gone over 3.5, and 10 have seen both teams scoring. So the 242 says we've got a 41% chance of over 3.5 goals landing here. Yet the seasonal averages in home and away matches involving these two teams, as well as the more recent matches, as we reach the conclusion of the campaign, all suggest goals here. So, chuck in the state of play if Spurs are motivated to try and finish in the European positions, plus Leeds scrapping for their lives, plus the potential for them to just, be all over really at half time. If, let's say, Everton are 3 goals up at half time or something similar like that filters through after about an hour, it could get quite ugly for them if they do chuck it in early. So, I think goals is the safest passage here.
Okay, yeah, goals for Mark O'Hare, agreeing with Miguel. And Adrian, you have a goals angle here and an interesting angle, and you're kind of bringing a little bit of that narrative that Miguel talked about on the final day and maybe the mayhem involved in the final day.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I found this really tricky because over 3.5, I know the Migs loves it. He loves it. He loves to push the boat out, but I'm always a little bit scared by a line that high. Both teams to score is unbackable. It's too skinny. So I was thinking, I don't know if I've got a bet here, because I absolutely can't trust Leeds and can't trust Spurs, especially away from home. What I saw from them last week, so I worked on the game against Brentford, was actually a very good first half performance. Kulusevski in behind Kane worked very well, and they look dangerous as a team going forward. It was just the moment Brentford actually started trying, the moment Brentford put a bit of aggression into their game, Spurs wilted. So I think the message from Allardyce has to be clear here. Get in Tottenham's faces, make it horrible for them, and see if they fancy it. And the body of evidence over the course of this season would indicate that Tottenham as a group don't fancy it when the going gets tough. And that's Leeds' best chance of glory here. I think Scoring that first goal across the weekend is big. So I do think Leeds will go for it, especially as they're the ones chasing from the furthest part away. So I think Sam Allardyce will get them revved up for a really, really quick start, and they've got to go for it. They've got to. But Tottenham are up against one of the worst defences in the Premier League. They've got Harry Kane, who's got a phenomenal record on the final day. No one in Premier League history has scored more goals on the final weekend than Harry. So he's almost nailed on to get at least one. I was looking at the numbers of first half goals, especially conceded. Spurs conceded 31 first half goals. That's the third worst record in the division. Only Bournemouth and Leicester have conceded more. And Leeds, pretty similar, 29 first half goals conceded. That's the next in line. So they're both used to getting off to bad starts defensively. We know that Leeds have to go for it in an attacking sense. Spurs, in a way, I think, the attack has to be the best form of defence for them here. Mason will definitely care about this. He'll do his best to motivate the player. So I expect Spurs to go for it. I personally think Spurs are more likely to win the game, actually, but I can't put money on that. So, but I can tip up over 1.5 first half goals. That's where I'm coming from here. I just think it's a case of it could be a little bit crazy right from the get-go here. Two very bad defences. And yeah, I think we'll see them slug it out over the course of the game. So look, if we see two first half goals, it lands at a price of 2.14, which I think is one of the more attractive bets around this match, because a lot of it you can't be sure on.
Okay, yeah, interesting play from Adrian there. Over 1.5 first half goals, 2.14. We'll go with the majority of the over 3.5 goals at our 2.42 to see. Hopefully the game does descend into chaos there. But we'll go to what is a difference of opinion on this game. Leicester City versus West Ham. We'll go to you first, Adrian, once we take a look at the betting that we currently have on matchbook.com. Leicester City out a small bit from this morning, 2.04. West Ham 3.8. The draw is available at 4.0. Both teams to score short enough again at around 1.68. And the Asian handicap line sees West Ham get half a goal head start at 1.94, and the goal line is 2.5. So yeah, Adrian, I mentioned the difference of opinion. You're going to make the case for Leicester City. I'm going to say it's going to be quite a hard case considering how poorly they've been the last few weeks.
Oh yeah, no, look, the record coming into the final weekend is pretty dreadful, isn't it? Under Dean Smith, he's not really managed to turn things around at all. But I thought it was a pretty impressive effort, if not an impressive performance at Newcastle. I admired Dean Smith for the tactical approach to leave out your two best players, Barnes and Maddison, for the penultimate match of the season was a massive call. But I think he recognised that the best we can do here, we're not going to win a match against Newcastle away, slugging it out. And he thought, we'll play for a draw. And if we nick a win, great. And they nearly got one at the end, if you remember, with that volley from the Maddison cross. So I thought it was actually a really clever plan, and it worked because they got the point that then puts the pressure on Everton to win on the final day. Leicester basically were backing themselves to draw there and win against West Ham on the final day. And it will be a genius plan if it pays off and Everton don't get the result. So I do think belief will have grown on the back of that point at Newcastle United. Barnes and Maddison will come back into the team. They have to, and it'll be a flip in terms of the tactical approach. This time it'll be attacking, and they'll go for it right from the off, I'd imagine, and test how much West Ham fancy it. They did beat West Ham earlier on in the season, 2-0 at the London Stadium. So they've got that on their side. And even though West Ham are in decent form, very impressive last weekend against Leeds, they've been pretty rubbish on the road this season. They've lost 12 of 18. Only Southampton, Leeds and Forest have lost more games away from home than West Ham United. They've lost their last 3 away from home as well, conceding 9 goals, the Hammers. And they're in that awkward position. I think David Moyes will pick his strongest team because it's 10 days away from a European final. But at the same time, those players will be thinking, I don't want to get injured here. They might subconsciously at least hold back, and that might play into Leicester's hands. So, yeah, I think Leicester can do it. I really do. Barnes and Maddison, if they're on it, And their record, by the way, in matches that Leicester have won this season is amazing. So they've won 8. Maddison played in 6 of those games. In those 6 games, Maddison scored 6 goals and made 4 assists. Barnes played in 7 of the 8 wins. He scored 6 goals across those victories. So when they turn up, those two, Leicester normally win. And they've got to turn up for this one. I think, personally, I think Leicester are more likely to beat West Ham than Everton are to beat Bournemouth. It's just how I feel. Even though the form, has been pretty wretched up until this point, I think they've got a chance to save themselves.
Okay, yeah. So that's Adrian going for Leicester City here. Miguel, over to you. You're looking at a goals angle, and again, set this one up first because Leicester City still have a decent chance of staying up. Obviously, if Everton avoid defeat or Everton don't win the game and a Leicester City win, goal difference is clear, so they will stay up. Sorry, come in again, Miguel. Sorry. No, go ahead. Sorry, so you just muted you there.
I'm actually similar thinking to Adrian, from maybe a slightly different perspective. Funnily, in what we're hearing, that the connection between Smith and the squad is maybe as strong as it could be at this point. I think there's been a few little questions about tactics, but all that said, I agree to get the draw against Newcastle was a good result. And whatever about kind of the likelihood of winning this individual game on the day, I think Leicester also have the best individual players that whatever about what a wider form, when it comes down to it, on an afternoon like this, one game, you'd want some of Leicester's players involved rather than anyone else, especially given some of the team issues elsewhere. Harvey Barnes being among the most prominent, as Adrian mentioned. Same with Maddison. I think that could be a difference. Given the way this whole battle has gone, I'm not confident enough to pick a victory for any one of these 3 teams. So I'm going to go on the safer side, which again feels high goals. But I think that's especially the case in this game, given that West Ham aren't exactly the most resilient defensively of late. Leicester have to go for it. They have got attacking quality. There have been a few hints that might release the Newcastle game notwithstanding. So I'm going for over 2.5.
Okay, yeah, 1.7 currently, over 2.5 goals. West Ham have been playing with freedom, particularly in that Leeds game last week. Mark, I'm guessing by your bet that you weren't impressed with Leicester's away performance against Newcastle, albeit they did manage to get the result in the end.
I found this game the hardest of the 3 Premier League games we're going to discuss. I wanted to be with goals as well. I thought 1.7 was just about on the cusp of acceptable. So, no, I wasn't that impressed with Leicester away at Newcastle, actually. And I think some of the narrative since then has been a little bit overblown in terms of what Dean Smith did.
From Adrian, you mean?
No. It's not aimed at Adrian at all. But I just think, a lot of people have sort of indicated the fact that they got that result, they got that clean sheet. And I know at this stage of the season, people will say results are all that matter. But I thought Leicester were quite fortunate to do so. And I was really disappointed, actually, in what they produced in forward areas. In a match, you must not lose. I think that, I guess that was the mindset going into it. But you've got to try and attempt to do a bit more than have one shot, and that coming in the 92nd minute. Conceding 23 attempts and having your woodwork hit 3 times, there's a bit of fortune there to go in your favour. But some of the talk after it was as if Leicester had turned into 1990s AC Milan or something. I thought they were quite lucky not to concede. So survival still remains out of their hands, really. And I thought they could have put themselves into a better position if they were a bit more proactive. And I know they sort of bought their time really before bringing on the big guns off the bench. But for me, if you're going to go down, you go down swinging. And I think, Everton need to beat Bournemouth regardless this weekend. So why not have a bit more of a go at Newcastle? But yeah, rant over really. Ultimately, can I back Leicester at even money? A team that won 8 times all season, 4 times at home. They've won once since February, 1 clean sheet in 23. And as I said, we're quite fortunate to do so. No, I can't, to be honest. So my numbers have them closer to 2.8. And I think that drop off down to even money is too big. I agree with Adrian. I think West Ham do go with a strong team here because of the 10-day break before the Conference League final. God, there's always concerns about players not wanting to be injured and not sort of committing 100% to this match. But I think confidence is high in the West Ham camp right now. And I think they'll be eager to kind of keep that high. The last thing they want to do is go and get spanked 3 or 4-0 by Leicester on the final day. So, I kind of agree with what the guys have said. All the 3 teams we talked about, Leicester, Leeds and Everton. They're not all going to win. One of them's definitely not going to win. I'll put my house on it. So I'm quite happy to kind of oppose them at short prices. So I found this the most difficult of the three to select. I would have gone down goals if we could have got 175 or bigger. I don't think we will. So happy to back West Ham with a half-goal start at almost the same price that Leicester to win.
And I'm happy to leave this match in terms of an official bet from the podcast. Tough game to call, but 3 different selections there. Leicester City for Adrian at 2.04, over 2.5 goals for Miguel, 1.7, and tentative pick West Ham plus half a goal for Mark O'Hare. We'll go to what is the richest game in football, they say, Coventry versus Luton. It is Saturday, 4:45. This used to be on the Bank Holiday Monday. They brought it forward a few years ago. The Saturday game, pushing the League One and League Two games aside. We'll take a look at the betting that we currently have on Matchbook.com. It's set up to be a tense game here. Coventry 3.35 in the 90-minute market. Luton 2.56. The draw is available at 3.15, and you can see that's reflected in both teams. The score heavily favoured now at 1.8. The Asian handicap line sees Coventry get a quarter goal head start at 1.84, and the goal line is 2.5, shaded a couple bit towards the under at 1.58. So, Mark, I'm guessing the stable diet for this game over the years has been tense, cautious, both teams to score no unders. Do the stats back that up?
Yeah, they do, definitely. You've already sort of given a great intro there about this being dubbed the most valuable match in world football because of the revenue it brings by playing Premier League football. But yeah, it tends to be cagey, tends to be tight. Goal mouth action tends to be quite shy. It's an occasion which is kind of tends to be settled by a moment of magic, a big mistake. Some teams get crippled by the occasion, others inspired. I'll let Adrian do the sort of real proper analysis on the two teams. I'll just focus on the on the trends, if you like, because it's now 25 years since the famous 4-4 draw between Sunderland and Charlton. In the following 24 years, we've had 16 from 24 matches. That's 67% go under 2.5 goals. Over half of those 24 matches, 13 of 24, have featured a maximum of 1 goal, including 7 of the most recent 10. I think this has every opportunity to go under 1.5 goals yet again, and the 0-0 is a potential runner here too. In terms of both teams to score betting, only 5 of the last 22 championship finals have seen both teams get on the score sheet. Now, obviously, the market is well aware of these previous trends and low-scoring matches, but I think under 1.5 goals at 284 is worth a look. But I think the main play here has to be both teams to score no at around 1.8, 1.83. It's a price that really does appeal, considering the high strike rate. These two teams have overachieved this year. They were 25-1 shots pre-season in the Championship. They're both operating off pretty low budgets compared to their rivals in the division. They're both what I would call excellent teams. There are a couple of standout players on either side, but they are strong teams in every sense of the word. Very well drilled, very well organised, very difficult to beat. And I think obviously when the goal expectancy is low, the opportunity or the chance of a draw increases, and that's why I'm quite surprised to see the draw, the biggest price of the three in terms of Coventry win, Luton win, or the draw at 325. Coventry have lost just once in 19. Luton have lost just 3 times in 27 since Christmas. Both regular season meetings between these two teams were drawn, so quite happy to have a bit of interest on the draw as well. But if it's going to be drawn, it's highly likely to be 2-2 or 3-3. So you might as well back draw and under 2.5 goals and back the 0-0 and the 1-1 at a nice price too. And it kind of goes without saying, but in low scoring matches, in finals, the first goal is key. 18 of the last 19 sides to score the first goal in the Championship playoff final went on to win promotion. So I think there will be an element of fear from both teams, respect as well, and pragmatism from both teams. I wouldn't bet anyone off the 0-0, the under 1.5 goals either. But my main players will be BTDS no and the draw and under 2.5 goals. Both sides racked up 20 clean sheets in the regular season, and both sides conceded just 1 shot on target in the semi-final second legs. They're both very comfortable playing without possession. I just think defences dominate here. Could be a bit of a slog, could be a scrap, but happy to oppose goals. Absolutely.
Okay. To confirm those couple of selections from Mark O'Hare, both teams score now 1.8 around that currently on Matchbook, and then couple the draw on under 2.5 goals. You'll find that in other markets on the Matchbook Betting Exchange 3.8, and that's competitively priced versus the rest of the odds checker grid. And Adrian, maybe for those Premier League supporters that are going to tune in for this game, with obviously all the Premier League games being on Sunday, set up and summarise both these teams from where they come from this season, because as Mark alluded to, given their pre-season odds, they've come from effectively nowhere to be 1 game away from the Premier League.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think with Coventry City, it's been brick by brick. Mark Robbins has just improved them year on year. They were in League Two, got promoted. League One, stabilised, then they went up. And then in the Championship, each finishing position year on year has got better. And they deserve their place here. And it would be a fantastic story, you know, for the same manager to take them from League Two to the Premier League. Just remarkable, especially given all the off-field nightmares that Coventry have had. They've had to ground share other clubs, problems with the ownership, etc. Luton have come from non-league, astonishing, really, rise from them. A great story around Rob Edwards, the boss. Obviously, went up with Forest Green last season, headhunted by Watford, who do a Watford and get rid of him after 10 games. And of course, Watford are Luton Town's biggest rivals. So he rocks up at Luton a few days later and he guides them potentially to the Premier League. I mean, that is some payback from Rob Edwards, potentially, should they win. In terms of the two teams, I mean, Mark said it out perfectly. I agree with everything. I've got the same two selections. For me, they're obvious selections ahead of this game. Neither team are possession-based. Coventry like to counter-attack. They've got an excellent defence. The three at the back are big, strong, resilient. Got a terrific goalkeeper in Ben Wilson. So they're well set up to handle Luton's aerial threat, which is where their strengths lie. They get loads of crosses in. They're really strong from set pieces. Two big guys up top that hold the ball and offer a real menace inside the area. I think Coventry, of all the teams in the Championship, are actually well set up to handle that. So on the counter, Coventry are very dangerous. Got a guy up front called Victor Gyökeres who's been superb. For me, the Championship's top man this season. Always on the move, dribbles with the ball, runs in behind, great finisher, holds it well. So they've got him. They've got Gustavo Hamer in central midfield, a great attacking midfielder as well. For me, those are the two best individuals on the pitch, the two most likely match winners. Luton, it's about the collective. It's about being strong, powerful, athletic, getting the crosses in and getting bodies into the box. But they also defend superbly. They've got one of the best defenders in the league, Tom Lockyer. Two quick, wide centre-backs as well, who again, might be well equipped to handle the threat of Gyökeres. So for me, this has got 0-0, 1-0 either way, or 1-1 written all over it. I'll be amazed, actually, if the final score isn't one of those four outcomes. I really would. So, yeah, I think, you look at Luton matches over the course of the season, they averaged 2.09, one of the lowest. Coventry matches averaged 2.26, again, one of the lowest in the division. If you wanted me to pick a winner, I would lean 1% towards Coventry because of Hamer and because of Gyökeres. And you can get, and this really appeals, if we were doing long shots, this would maybe be it. Coventry and BTTS No is available at 5.2, which I think is a terrific price. For them potentially to win it 1-0, or 2-0. So yeah, lots to think about. But for me, likely to be a draw, low scoring draw, and BTTS No feels a big runner too.
Okay, yeah, and maybe just one more pointer with to add on to Adrian's selection. If you do fancy Coventry 1-0, 9.4 seems a tad big if one of those score lines is going to be correct, as the guys said. So, and again, your selection, both teams to score now here, you're in agreement with the guys. It's such a massive fixture. Like, maybe as a journalist, what team would you rather come up next season? Because they're both brilliant stories, Coventry and Luton Town, for different reasons.
That's exactly it. And I think it's quite important as well, in that the way football has gone in the last decade, 2 decades, really, in that we've had this kind of profound economic stratification, which is basically kind of tiers right down the league. Maybe was best exemplified in the Big Six, even as we said earlier, that is starting to break. But what it's actually done is also, it's almost created a Premier League 2 in the Championship, where you get a lot of the same clubs coming back up because they've benefited from that Premier League money. We've spoken before about kind of how almost Fulham and Norwich City exchange places in the last few years. West Brom have come up and down. Sunderland up until recently, but although now they're on the way back up. Burnley look to be benefiting from that. Sheffield United look to be benefiting from that. But I think what's heartening and encouraging is that both Coventry and Luton, in keeping with the wider stories about the clubs, are from outside that kind of Premier League 2, if you like. And so this, I mean, again, yeah, it's the most valuable game in football. But given the journeys these clubs have been on. It feels about so much more than kind of bringing this down to money. It's about something much, much greater. And, these clubs coming together. I mean, one of the lines we've all heard so often now is that if Luton come up, they actually have to make pretty significant improvements to their ground. But this is about something much bigger than that. All that said, totally, I completely agree with Mark in terms of the kind of what the playoff has become. I was at a dreadful playoff a few years ago between Reading and Huddersfield. Not to dampen excitement for the game.
That was the most boring game I've ever watched, I think.
Yeah, it was really bad. I would expect something closer to those lines, especially given Coventry's recent record of draws, rather than kind of the famous 4-4. That's not to say it shouldn't be watched though, because there's some drama within that. But yeah, I would lean towards a draw, but I think both teams to score no. I think this could be a very tight game. 1-0 could well go into extra time, and I suppose both teams score no covers that.
Yeah, I mentioned the calendar being clear on Saturday, the football calendar that is. So all eyes will be focused on this game, and we're going to lock in those two selections, given that we didn't have a bet in the last one. Both teams to score no 1.8, and if you want one at a bigger price, draw and under 2.5, effectively 0-0 or 1-1 in the correct score market at 3.8. So they're the two selections from Adrian, Mark, and Miguel. We will move on to League One and League Two playoffs. Adrian, you've got a selection vote, which is brilliant, gives us a chance to talk about these games. Barnsley, Sheffield Wednesday. I mean, you were commentating on that game. Talk us through the emotions of Sheffield Wednesday and Peterborough, because I think all eyes were glued onto it by the penalty shootout, at least.
Oh, it was amazing. Yeah, I mean, I wasn't even supposed to be there, and then I got the late call up, and I just lucked out. It's one of the most spectacular matches I've ever been to in person. Absolute joy, so exhilarating. The way that the energy of the crowd grew and grew throughout the 90 and 120 minutes was extraordinary to witness. Just to pull it back to 4-0 with pretty much the last kick of the game was Roy the Rover stuff, wasn't it? And then, again in extra time, they went down Sheffield Wednesday and picked themselves up off the canvas. It was brilliant. And I was chuffed for Darren Moore. No one could have predicted that. It was extraordinary. But they've got to go again, haven't they? And I think Barnsley are tough opponents for them. I really do. I watched the game at Oakwell in person not that long ago. Barnsley beat Wednesday 4-2 in front of their own fans. And the sort of pattern of that game was Sheffield Wednesday, the better team with the ball. They've got the better individuals. But Barnsley pressed the living daylights out of you. They are ferocious. And what they did, they forced Sheffield Wednesday long, which didn't suit Barry Bannon and a few of their players. And when they won the ball, Barnsley, they're really, really good at then creating chances from them. So they are going to get in the face of Wednesday, I think, at Wembley. And they could be really tough opponents for them. If they're tired, Sheffield Wednesday, mentally or physically, Barnsley are pretty much the worst opponents to face, because they'll be fit and athletic and powerful and right up and at it. I'm going to go with a goals angle, though. I can't tip, 4 against Wednesday here. I lean maybe slightly towards Barnsley, but my selection would be goals. I think that both teams carry a real threat going forwards. I don't think either are amazing at the back either. 54% of Barnsley's games have gone over 2.5. Both teams over the course of the season average over 2.5 goals per game. Barnsley defended really, really well against Bolton, kind of nullified them. But, Sheffield Wednesday, as we saw in that game against Peterborough, have got a lot of potential goal scorers. So, I think both teams will score. That was a little bit skinny on the market. So I'm going to go with an entertaining to and fro, back and forth, playoff final. I think this might be the best of the three on Bank Holiday Monday. I'm going to go over 2.5 goals. But with a slight lean towards Barnsley.
Okay, yeah, currently priced at 2.04, Adrian, and stick with you for the League Two game. Now, Irish football fans, since the Roddy Collins days, would always have had Carlisle in their top 3 or 4 teams in England, and you like them drawn a bet here to get promoted to League One. Yeah, Roddy Collins. Would that name mean anything to you, Adrian? Roddy Collins?
I've seen the name, but not really. No, I couldn't tell you what it looks like. I think this one might be slightly more dour. It might be more in line with sort of Luton versus Coventry. Over the course of this season, I think Stockport have been the slightly better team. their form in the second half of the season was way better than Carlisle United's. But across the semi-finals, I was unimpressed with Stockport and surprised by the quality that I got from Carlisle when they saw off Bradford. So I'm basing it on that current form, really, and the way that Carlisle raised their game against a pretty good Bradford team. So I think, even though they're underdogs for the game, Carlisle United, I think they've got a real chance here. They kept clean sheets recently against Northampton, Bradford and Stevenage. 3 top teams, Carlisle, so they're pretty solid at the back. And Stockport rushed Paddy Madden, their top goal scorer, back from injury for the semi-final second leg. I'm not sure how fit he is. And I think that Carlisle can sort of keep Stockport a little bit quiet here. So, yeah, it's going to be a tight game. There's not a lot to choose. They've both played the same system, 3-5-2. There's a danger they might cancel one another out. But, yeah, set pieces, Carlisle just have the edge with Owen Moxon, who's got more assists than anyone at League 2 level. So I'm going to say that Carlisle can at least take this to extra time where we get our money back if it's a draw. But I'm willing to back them. Carlisle, draw no bet, 2.18. Better than evens. I'm happy to take that because Stockport didn't play well. I think they were pretty lucky to get past Salford City, and if they don't raise their game, they won't beat Carlisle.
Okay, Carlisle draw no bet, as Adrian said, 2.18. His other selection over 2.5 goals, 2.04. Insights.matchbook.com. Get all the guys' picks as well as Mark and Adrian's insights columns every week. And Adrian, over to you for Serie A. You have a selection here. There's 2 games to go in this league, and you like a bet here.
Not me. Who's got that one?
Oh, sorry, Mark. Apologies.
I mean, it's silly season across Europe, isn't it? Where you're getting teams going off at artificially short prices, and I thought Lecce almost going off as favourites away at Monza earlier in the week. The market is starting to correct itself a little bit, but even still, it's a stupid price, really. A Lecce side that's won once in 13 are 3 points above the drop zone, 7 wins all season. If you exclude the bottom 6, Lecce have actually only won 4 of 26 matches this season. So the price made little sense to me, other than Lecce's motivation to claw their way away from trouble. But Monza, in theory, have nothing to play for, but they've had an incredibly good first campaign ever in the Italian top flight. They're already safe in mid-table. They have been for quite a while now, and they're still moving forwards and playing some really good football. As I say, an incredible season, which is easily forgotten considering they lost their opening 5 matches after promotion. But if you look at their results since then, they've played 31 games. They would actually be ranked 6th in Serie A based on points earned in those 31 games. 1 point behind Milan and above Roma in terms of points in that 31 game sample, which is incredible, really. Only Napoli have lost fewer games in that sample as well. Monza is suffering just 7 defeats. And most recently, they've lost once in 12. They've beaten both Napoli and Fiorentina at home. They held Roma here not long ago either. Last weekend, they won away at Sassuolo to make it 5 wins in 7 unbeaten games. They're a terrific little team right now, and I just think they've been disrespected a little bit by the market just because of Lecce's need for the points, as we've discovered many, many times, not just this season, but in previous campaigns. Just because you need to win doesn't necessarily make you a better team. So the fact you can get Monza off a +0 start, the same as a draw no bet wager at 1.88, really does appeal. They are the better team.
Monza, draw no bet, as Mark said, 1.88, a selection from Serie A. We'll go to Matchbook Zero bets here. We'll be pretty brief with these, but Matchbook Zero, for those that are betting with sportsbooks that haven't quite tried the exchange, well worth checking out Matchbook Zero. We're effectively getting 0% commission, 0% margin, up to £20 per bet. And at the moment, we have the win-draw-win markets. And Miguel, if you were to go for a win-draw-win bet from the Premier League, you'd lean towards Adrian and the Leicester City versus West Ham.
Yeah, as I say, and I've actually, since we've been talking about it, I'm convincing myself a little bit more. I mean, I suppose I'm a little bit resistant to kind of back any of these 3 teams, given the situation they're in. But equally, that almost applies to the whole Premier League final day, given, it's just because of the nature of certain teams, even those who are higher in the table and you would think are in a better position, just the nature of the day means it doesn't necessarily apply itself. Odd things happen. A lot of players just want to get away. And because of that need, because of Leicester's individual quality, I think it's one of the games with a better chance for a home team win. So I'm going to go Leicester-West Ham.
Okay, Adrian, over to you. A selection game we haven't talked about: Villa versus Brighton. And we got a comment in earlier saying Unai Emery's been on these Villa players all week because, of course, it's in their hands for a Conference League spot, albeit it is a tough assignment against Brighton.
Yeah, I fancy Aston Villa here. I really do. You have to. Over the last 12 matches of this Premier League season, only 2 teams have got more points than Aston Villa: Newcastle and Manchester City. That's amazing. They've conceded 7 goals in those 12 matches as well. So they're pretty rock solid at the back. Obviously, going forward, they've been knocking them in as well. Watkins has dried up a little bit, but other players have started to chip in as well. Look at the home form. Under Unai Emery, they've won 8 of 12. They've scored in all 12 of those home games as well. So I think with Brighton kind of toasting their Europa League success, I think a few of the lads might have been out on the beers last night. I can see Brighton not being quite at their sharpest. Fired up Villa Park. I think the atmosphere is going to be amazing there. They want this. They want this really, really badly. They're in brilliant form. They almost won at Anfield last weekend. Liverpool were on fire, and it took a very, very late equaliser to deny them a win there. They are in top shape at the moment, Aston Villa, and I think they can get the job done against, albeit a really superb Brighton side, but one who might have taken their eye off the ball. For me, Brighton's season is done now. They can celebrate what they've achieved. This feels like it's a day for Aston Villa, and I believe they'll get that win they need.
Okay, 2.2. These prices these markets get priced on Matchbook Zero 48 hours before the event, so to check that out when they do come out. Mark O'Hare, Bundesliga 2 is the selection for your Matchbook Zero. So explain this one for us.
Well, I think you will struggle to find a worse prepared team for a match this weekend than Darmstadt in the Zwei Bundesliga. So last weekend, they won promotion to the Bundesliga with a really sketchy 1-0 win over Magdeburg. Sparked great scenes of celebration around the club, around the city, just an immense feeling of relief because they had led the league for most of the campaign, but they've really stuttered since February. So just relieved, really, to get over the line, win promotion. Now, the club, the squad, the players have been soaking up the celebrations, so much so that on Wednesday, the players, the squad, were still in the Balearic Islands on the beers celebrating. They play away at Greuther Fürth on Sunday. I'd be staggered if those players were recovered enough in time to put their best foot forward and play to the best of their ability in a match, which doesn't mean anything to them, really. They still have the title to try and win, but I don't think they care. They've already lost 4 of the last 6 away games, and that's when they have had, reason to play to their best of their ability. They're actually favourites to win this match. And, you can go onto Darmstadt's official Twitter account if you want. There's a photo of them enjoying those beers on the beach in the sunshine. They're not going to be anywhere near their best. They're not going to be asked. And I just think Greuther Fürth, they might be mid-table. They have only lost twice at home all season. They're outsiders to win this match, 2.8. I'm happy to back them at that price.
Every angle covered on the Matchbook Football podcast. As
Great
always, Mark, we will stick for you for best.
Great tactical analysis. They can't be asked. Sometimes that's all it takes.
And just the casual stat at the end to back up the bet, but he was already on that bet. That just was a stat that happened to be there. But Mark, we'll stick with you. Best bet time, and it's hard to get away from the championship playoff. We're not selling this game, as Miguel said, but look, a winner's a winner.
Yeah, it's must watch regardless, really, the championship playoff final. But it's a bet, one of a collection of bets I tend to have on the final, almost irrespective of the teams on show. But I think this season it absolutely has to be the bet. Both teams to score no at 1.83, a winner in 17 of the last 22 championship playoff finals. Both sides in exceptional form, both sides very difficult to beat, both sides built upon real sort of rock solid defences. They've both kept collectively over 40 clean sheets in the championship this season. An enormous match for both teams. I just think the likelihood of a high goals total is, there's a very, very slim chance of this game getting out of hand. I think if we can survive the first 20 minutes without a goal, there's a great chance that this bet lands at a really nice price.
1.83 currently and getting backed. Miguel, over to you. Southampton versus Liverpool. There are games on the final day, you alluded to the madness of this, and I guess in this one is the one you picked out as maybe neither team is going to be at it defensively. They're just going to go for goals. Southampton.
Yeah, and also the vast disparity between the quality of sides. As Adrian mentioned, despite that Villa result, Liverpool do look like they're beginning to kind of have maybe a second team come together. They can be rampant, as we've seen in some games, and I think that feeds into this. But maybe should have gone for Liverpool to win by a certain score, but to keep it on the other side and allow for the possibility of a few Southampton goals, maybe because of that, allowing for that kind of that last day element, if you like. I'm going to go for over 3.5 at 2.02.
Okay, 2.02 over 3.5 goals, Southampton versus Liverpool. And Premier League for your best bet, Adrian Clarke, Palace and under 4.5 goals versus Forest. Is this another, this team's on the beach, they've stayed up, and Nottingham Forest. There've been great angles today on this final day.
Kind of. Yeah, look, I would echo Mark's best bet of BTTS now in the Championship playoff final. That's really strong. Bournemouth with the handicap at Everton, I think, is another really strong pick. I just thought I'd chuck in another bet. Yeah, Palace and under 4.5. One of 18 Palace home games has gone over 4.5 this season. So I think you're on quite safe ground around that number and the goals line. I think 3 of Forest's 18 away games have gone over 4.5, but they were at City, Arsenal and Liverpool. Don't think they're going to get battered in this game by Palace in the same way. Palace, for Forest, job done. Obviously, yeah, they're kind of on the beach now. Had a great win against Arsenal. I mean, Arsenal were terrible, weren't they? But Forest ground out that, and they've earned their survival. Palace have sort of quietly been very good under Roy Hodgson, haven't they? And at home to the bottom 8, of which Forest are a member, of course, they've been really good. They've won 6. Drawn 1 at home to the bottom 8 this season. We know that Forest are pretty rank on the road. They've lost 13 of 18 away from the City ground. They've scored 10 goals away from home all season. So, yeah, I just think Palace, buoyed by Eze's call up to the England squad, wanting to end the season on a high for Roy Hodgson, who's done such a great job for them. Yeah, I just think they're a really, really strong pick to see off a Forest team that are really, I would imagine, just going through the motions here at Selhurst Park. So, yeah, Palace and under 4.5, 2.2. I like it.
Okay, that's the podcast best bets, and brings into the final day of the season podcast, which has ticked over an hour from my memory, would be one of the first ones this season. So there just shows you serious betting angles on the final day of the season. My thanks to Miguel and Adrian and Mark. Before you go, I've just had a look at the Armstand, and that picture you're talking about, those guys are having a great time. I think this is Tuesday. So I'll be taking some of the 2.8. Producer Ryan has already taken some of the 2.8. So maybe be quick if you're listening back to this.
Hey, some players perform better, after they've been on the booze. You never know. It might bring even more out of them.
Yeah, I'm a big believer in that, Adrian. But look, we'll see how that goes. Matchbook Insights, do check out the guys' selection. Stay tuned to our social channels over the weekend, where we'll be clipping up 30-second podcast clips as well for any of them that you missed. Until then, we'll chat to you next week. We'll be back for an FA Cup final preview. Check our social channels to see what time of day. Until then, take care. Bye-bye.